I'm a leaf on the wind. That is one of my favorite lines from one of my favoritist movies. And I know favoritist is not correct, but it works for me. Favoritist movies, and it is the 2005 film Serenity, which, if you aren't a sci-fi geek like me, Serenity and the TV series that went along with it, Firefly, it's like a sci-fi western thing. It was done by the creator of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So anyway, loved it, loved the show. Anyway, towards the end of the movie, with enemy ships bearing down, shooting at them, hitting and damaging their spaceship. It is a spaceship. Wash, that's the name of the character. He's the pilot. He almost miraculously, safely lands the ship, bouncing. And as it comes to that screeching halt, Wash declares, "I'm a leaf on the wind." Except he wasn't, actually. Wash was doing his best. He was handling the controls, compensating for the damage. You know, you see that, in the movie, you see him like whatever he's doing. And fixing and adjusting whatever was wrong, whatever spaceships have, thrusters, engines, I don't know, landing gear, warp drives, I don't know, whatever. But granted, he wasn't in complete control of the ship, but he certainly had more control than a leaf dropped from a tree. What? That has nothing. All it does is tossed and blown around by the wind. That leaf has no say where it goes. Buffeted, spiraling, finally to land on the ground wherever the wind decides to let go. A leaf has no control. In our gospel for this morning, Jesus is talking to his closest followers, his disciples, and they have asked him, I just can't imagine how they would come up with this and why they would have the gall to ask. But anyway, they ask, who is the greatest? And like many a good teacher, Jesus answers with an object lesson. An object lesson. He places a little child. Now, the Greek actually doesn't say whether it's a boy or a girl. Dr. Gaffney, the translator and creator of this womanist lectionary that we've been using for about a year, she decided to give the child gender and made it a girl child. So, whatever you want to imagine, Jesus tells the grown men and women standing around him that these adults, need to be changed and become like that child. Okay, Jesus, what do you mean? Exactly? What do you mean by that, really? How are we to become like little children? Now, some have suggested that it's a child's faith, that we are to have faith like a child, and then people will say that that's unquestioning, and but I don't know if they've ever met a child, because childs have lots of questions. But anyway, we'll put that just a whole other sermon on that one. But anyway, but actually the word faith does not occur in this passage. It's not here. So I do not think that Jesus is saying that our faith is to be like that of a child's faith, because that's also not exactly what the disciples asked. They weren't talking about faith. They wanted to know who was the most important, the greatest, who's going to be in charge, in other words, who's going to be in control. So Jesus responds, they and we are to be changed and become like children. So I have a whole bunch of crayons here and Legos. No, I'm kidding. This time. But that does bring up again a good point. What about that child are we to be like? I would love to say it's their curiosity, because, that is, kids they do have curiosity. Imagination, I think that's a great option. But Jesus goes on to say that we are to humble ourselves, and that is key. However, I, again, do not think that Jesus is talking about some innate quality of children, because, again, I don't really think of them as being humble. Little kids, they think they're Superman or whatever, they can do all sorts of stuff. No, it's not some innate humility. I think it is their humble or low status that children have. And that's what we see going on in the gospel. So let me ask you, did the little child that Jesus makes an object lesson, did that little child have a say in what was going on? In being an object lesson? No, Jesus just gets a kid from somewhere. Perhaps picks them up from whatever they were doing, playing in the dirt, whatever, picking their nose, whatever kids do. And Jesus plops this child down in the midst of strangers, and there the kid is. It didn't say, hey, can I volunteer for this? No. Not to mention Dr. Will Gaffney arbitrarily assigning gender to a child. The child is basically a prop. They have no say, no power, little control of the situation or themselves. Now, especially in the ancient world, children were very vulnerable, especially if they were poor. Their lives were so tenuous. Loved, yes. I'm not saying children weren't loved, but definitely not in charge. I dare say they, rather than that character wash that I began my sermon with, are much more akin to leaves on the wind. Children, sticky, snot running down their faces, sometimes loud, unruly, definitely not the movers and the shakers of the world around them, definitely not the strongest, the wisest, the wealthiest, the most important. But we are to be like them. And if you notice, Jesus goes on to identify himself with them. He connects himself to these little ones. Whoever welcomes them welcomes him. The littlest, the least. These are our role models. This is how we are to be the church. It wasn't just some word Jesus said to his disciples that doesn't apply. No, this is how we are to be. Welcoming, sitting with, listening to, becoming like those the world around us chooses to ignore. We daresn't. Oh, I love to be able to throw daresn't in. Just an old-timey word I just love. We daresn't find those little ones, whether it's children or the unhoused or the mentally ill or anyone tossed aside, we daresn't find them just to be annoyances or distractions or unimportant. Someone who in our busyness and our self-imposed importance figuratively or literally run past. No, we should be like the two Stevens Point high school runners. I don't know if anybody else caught this little bit of good news. You did? The Stevens Point high school runners last week, I think. And as they were nearing the end of their cross-country race, they saw a competitor slip and fall. Now, instead of taking advantage of their good luck and making that mad dash across the finish line, as was expected of them, what's the point of a race? To win, get a better time, right? It's for you and your team. These things count. It's not like it's not important. I'm sure there's lots of people cheering Instead, the two high school boys from Stevens Point both turned around, ran back to the competitor, helped him up, and on either side of him, arm in arm, ran him to the finish line, and the three of them crossed the finish line together. That's one example of many young people who get it. Their actions remind us that, you know what, winners actually don't take it all. They don't. The point of our life, the point of following Jesus, is not our survival or our success, but faithfulness and compassion. The two Stevens Point high schoolers probably had ugly race times with that one, but their choice, their action, was exactly what Jesus meant when he said that we are to be changed and that we are to become like the littlest, the least, the last. Now, I wish I could have been there to see those three young men, the three boys. I'm sure they got lots of cheers for that, though. I'm sure they did. I wish I could have seen it, because I believe in the eyes of God, it was beautiful. That was beautiful. Probably as beautiful as leaves floating, dancing, twirling in the wind, to only then kiss the dirt and land on the ground. A leaf in the wind. Amen.